The spark of conflict. Humanity's rise had been a story of gradual, relentless progress. From the early days of primitive tools and fire to the development of complex machines and space travel, humankind had fought against all odds to push their limits. Their journey to the stars, however, was not without its obstacles. The dream of reaching beyond the confines of Earth had been a shared vision for centuries. As humanity developed the ability to send probes to distant planets, the promise of expanding into space was no longer just a fantasy, it was becoming a reality. But even as humanity's space program progressed, the harsh realities of the cosmos began to reveal themselves. The solar system, vast and empty, seemed to be the perfect place for exploration. Yet, even here, humanity found itself struggling against its own limitations. The human race, though ambitious and eager, had yet to unlock the full potential of interstellar travel. They had mastered sublight speed, but true faster-than-light, FTL, travel remained out of reach. And while humanity had made incredible technological advances, the aliens of the galaxy had long since surpassed them. The first warning signs came when the mining operations on the moons of Saturn were threatened. Human colonization efforts in the outer reaches of the solar system had been met with resistance from those who saw Earth's growing presence as a threat. Mars, with its sprawling domed cities and thriving industries, stood as humanity's beacon of success. Yet even here, tensions simmered beneath the surface. The Rakel, an ancient and advanced alien species, had noticed the rapid expansion of humanity and began to observe the upstart species with growing interest. They were no strangers to conflict and had long ago perfected the art of war. The Rakel had evolved in an environment where strength was the currency of survival. Their civilization was forged in the fires of countless wars against neighboring species, and they had become the undisputed masters of interstellar combat. With their FTL capabilities, they could traverse galaxies in mere hours, and their ships were armed with devastating weapons that could obliterate entire fleets in seconds. The Rakel had seen many species rise and fall, and they had always been the last ones standing. At first, the Rakel viewed humanity's expansion as little more than a nuisance. The human race, they believed, was too immature, too fractured, and too focused on internal conflicts to pose any real threat. But over time, something about humanity's relentless determination and their capacity for growth began to worry the Rakel. The way humans adapted to their environment, how they solved problems, and how quickly they had moved from primitive stone tools to sublight travel, it was clear that humanity was progressing far faster than the Rakel had anticipated. Humanity's reach into the stars was also fueled by an unprecedented effort in innovation. While their technology was not as advanced as the Rakel's, it was evolving at a breathtaking rate. The humans had a rare ability to learn from their mistakes and improve upon them. They had developed new forms of propulsion, power sources, and weaponry, though still inferior to the Rakel's might. Their mining operations on the moons of Saturn alone had unlocked vast new resources, which in turn fueled their technological rise. The wealth from these colonies provided the necessary infrastructure to push their space programs further into the stars. As Earth scientists toiled away on new and groundbreaking technologies, the threat of the Rakel loomed larger. The Rakel's fleets were not yet within striking distance, but they were watching humanity with increasing concern. What began as a series of intelligence reports and whispers of their interest in human expansion began to escalate into something far more dangerous. The Rakel began to take active measures, sending covert operatives to monitor humanity's progress. They even sabotaged a few early human missions, testing their resolve and abilities. It was in this period of uncertainty that the United Earth Defense Council, UEDC, convened for an emergency meeting. The council was composed of the brightest minds from Earth's governments and scientific communities, all united by one cause: the preservation of humanity's future. The world had become more connected than ever before, with space stations orbiting planets, interplanetary trade routes, and thriving cities on Mars. But now, as the Rakel's interest in human expansion grew more apparent, Earth's leaders knew that this progress could be at risk. Gentlemen, the UEDC's leader, Admiral James Hawthorne, began, "We have been watching the Rakel for years. We've been gathering intelligence, watching their fleet movements, and we know they're coming. We need to be ready. But right now, we are not. Our ships are slow, outdated, and woefully underpowered for what's coming. If we want to survive, we need to outsmart them. We need to make a ship that can match their speed and firepower." The room fell silent. The idea of a ship capable of faster-than-light travel had been dismissed by many as a pipe dream, a technological impossibility. Humanity was simply not yet ready to compete on that level. Yet, in this moment of desperation, the Council agreed to push forward with an audacious plan. They decided to accelerate their research on FTL technology, using their best minds to build something that could hold its own against the Rakel. The Starship Vanguard would be their greatest hope. The next few months were a blur of activity. The UEDC tapped into every resource they had, from the best engineers to the top military strategists. The vision for the Vanguard was clear. It would be a multi-purpose vessel, capable of both defense and exploration. It would be the first ship to break the speed of light, a beacon of humanity's strength in the face of an unknown enemy. But it would also need to be more than just a ship. It would have to embody the very spirit of humanity itself: creativity, resilience, and the unshakable belief that no force in the galaxy could ever defeat them. Captain Sarah Leclerc, a seasoned military pilot, was chosen to command the Starship Vanguard. Leclerc was a woman of incredible strength, both in her intellect and her resolve. She had grown up in the midst of the last war on Earth and had seen firsthand the destruction wrought by alien forces. She had lost loved ones in the early years of humanity's space expansion, and she vowed to never let the same fate befall the future of humanity. Under her command, the Starship Vanguard would take on the impossible task of defending Earth and its colonies. The ship was designed to be agile, faster than any vessel humanity had built before, and capable of outmaneuvering the Rakel's technologically superior ships. It would be the key to humanity's survival. But even as the ship's construction began, Captain Leclerc knew they would need more than just a fast ship. They would need a plan that would outsmart the Rakel at every turn. The rise of the Vanguard. As construction on the Starship Vanguard proceeded, the atmosphere on Earth grew thick with anticipation and fear. Humanity had always been resilient, but the Rakel posed a new kind of threat, an existential one. Their FTL technology was a stark reminder of how far ahead they were. To make matters worse, intelligence reports indicated that the Rakel had begun to mobilize their fleets, preparing to invade the outer reaches of human colonies. If the Vanguard failed, humanity would be vulnerable to an overwhelming force. Admiral Hawthorne watched over the development of the Vanguard closely, but he knew the ship's success would rely on more than just advanced technology. It would need to be a symbol of human willpower. He'd often walk through the ship's construction bays, seeing the engineers working tirelessly, knowing each piece they assembled wasn't just metal and circuitry, it was humanity's hope. Speed. Leclerc had insisted in the early planning stages. "We don't have the luxury of time. If we're going to stand a chance against the Rakel, we need to make the Vanguard the fastest ship in the universe." The engineers at the UEDC had their work cut out for them. Developing FTL propulsion was considered a near impossible task, but they had an edge the Rakel did not, a shared belief that they could achieve the impossible. Humanity's knack for innovation had led them to a breakthrough. After years of failed experiments, they finally stumbled upon the key to unlocking FTL travel, a combination of quantum tunneling and a newly discovered energy form known as X-drive, a supercharged engine that could bend space-time itself. It wasn't perfect, not yet, but it was their only hope. The Starship Vanguard would not just be a ship. It would be humanity's first FTL-capable vessel, equipped with state-of-the-art shielding and weapons that could match the Rakel's advanced arsenal. But the technology was new, untested in combat, and prone to malfunction in ways that could be catastrophic. Still, they had no choice but to move forward. As the Vanguard neared completion, Captain Sarah Leclerc began assembling her crew. The selection process was rigorous. Only the best were considered for the mission. Among them was Lieutenant Taro Yamamoto, a brilliant tactician and former war hero who had proven his strategic mind in previous battles against space pirates. His deep understanding of alien warfare would be invaluable when confronting the Rakel. Another notable member of the crew was Dr. Lena Rice, a scientist specializing in alien technologies. Rice had worked on numerous projects to understand extraterrestrial artifacts recovered from human encounters with alien species. Her knowledge of alien technology, particularly that of the Rakel, would give the crew an edge in anticipating enemy tactics and exploiting any weaknesses. But perhaps the most surprising member of the crew was ex-commander Javier Cruz, a former Rakel soldier who had defected to humanity after a failed mission that had led to the destruction of his entire battalion. His experience with the Rakel's tactics was crucial in shaping their defense strategies. Cruz had once been a part of the Rakel war machine, but now he stood side by side with humans, driven by a deep-seated remorse and a desire for redemption. Together, this ragtag team of experts, scientists, and warriors formed the heart of the Vanguard's crew. They were a symbol of unity. Humanity's greatest strength was its ability to come together, regardless of past allegiances or differences. In the face of overwhelming odds, they had become an unbreakable force. The day the Starship Vanguard was launched was marked by a sense of nervous excitement. The sleek, silver hull of the ship gleamed under the light of the sun as it broke free from Earth's gravity well. The ship's engines hummed to life, powered by the revolutionary X-Drive, and the crew braced themselves for the uncharted territory that lay ahead. Admiral Hawthorne watched from the command center as the ship ascended. The weight of the moment hung heavily in the air. If the Vanguard succeeded, it could turn the tide of the war against the Rakel. If it failed, humanity's last line of defense would be obliterated, and the galaxy would become a playground for the Rakel's ruthless dominance. As the Vanguard entered deep space, Leclerc addressed her crew, standing tall on the bridge, her voice steady and strong. "Listen up, everyone," she said, her gaze sweeping across the faces of her crew. "We're not just here to survive. We're here to win. The Rakel think they can bully us into submission, but they have no idea what they're up against. We have something they can never replicate: our ingenuity, our creativity, and our will to fight. We're going to prove that humanity is a force to be reckoned with." With that, the Starship Vanguard set its course toward the Rakel's nearest known stronghold. The journey ahead would be long and perilous, but the crew was united in their resolve. They were no longer just human civilians or military personnel. They were a symbol of humanity's fight for survival, and they would not back down. Meanwhile, light years away, the Rakel were preparing for their next move. They had been watching humanity's development for decades, and their intelligence networks had reported that the Vanguard had left Earth's orbit. Though they underestimated humanity's ability to develop FTL technology, they were not naive. They knew that this was just the beginning of a much larger conflict, one that would shape the future of the galaxy. The Rakel's Supreme Commander, Carroll, stood before a holographic map of the galaxy, his reptilian eyes narrowing as he analyzed humanity's progress. "So they finally built a ship capable of FTL travel," he mused, his voice low and calculating. "Impressive, but they are far too young to defeat us. Let them come. We will teach them the price of defiance." Back aboard the Vanguard, Captain Leclerc's mind was equally focused on what lay ahead. The unknown stretched out before her like a dark ocean, and every decision she made could mean the difference between victory and annihilation. The crew was ready, but as they closed in on the Rakel's outer defenses, they knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning of a battle that would decide humanity's fate. Into the heart of the beast, the Vanguard glided silently through the cold void of space, its engines humming with a quiet power that only the crew could hear. Time seemed to stretch out endlessly as the ship traveled farther from Earth and closer to the unknown dangers that lay ahead. Captain Leclerc stood on the bridge, staring out into the infinite expanse of stars, her mind focused on the mission and the lives of those depending on her. The crew had come together in the face of adversity, but their true test had just begun. "Status report, Lieutenant Yamamoto," Captain Leclerc ordered, her voice steady, though her pulse raced with anticipation. Lieutenant Yamamoto, a man known for his sharp strategic mind and calm demeanor, turned to her with a look of determination. "We're approaching the Rakel's outer defense perimeter, Captain. Long-range sensors are picking up some unusual activity on the edge of their territory. They know we're coming." Leclerc nodded, her expression unreadable. She'd expected this. The Rakel weren't going to let humanity's first FTL ship reach their territory without a fight. They were predators, and the Vanguard was a challenge they couldn't ignore. "We've trained for this moment. All crew members, report to your stations," she said, her tone unwavering. The crew moved swiftly, each member slipping into the rhythm of their roles with practiced precision. The tension was palpable, but there was also a sense of unity. Humanity's greatest strength lay not just in its technology, but in its ability to adapt and work together. For every alien race that sought to dominate, humanity had always found a way to rise, to turn the tide, to outthink its enemies. As the Vanguard drew closer to the Rakel's stronghold, the reality of the situation began to sink in. The vastness of space, once awe-inspiring, now felt like a graveyard. The stars blinked in the distance, cold and indifferent to the lives that would be fought for and lost in the coming battle. Leclerc took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, but inside, she knew this was no ordinary mission. This was the fight for humanity's future. "Captain," Dr. Lena Reyes called from the science station. "I'm detecting something strange on the outskirts of their territory. It's not a fleet. At least, not like any I've seen before. The energy signatures are inconsistent, like they're trying to mask their presence." Leclerc turned to her. "A trap?" Reyes shook her head. "Possibly, but the pattern is unlike anything we've encountered. I'll need more time to analyze it, but we should proceed with caution." "I agree," said Admiral Hawthorne, his voice crackling through the comms from Earth. "We've sent our best data to you, Captain. Be on high alert, and remember, humanity's survival depends on this mission." Leclerc's eyes hardened. "We'll make sure that's not in vain, Admiral." As the Vanguard neared the first line of defense, an unexpected series of bright flashes lit up the void ahead. The ship's sensors went haywire as massive energy pulses surged toward them. Without warning, the shields flared to life, crackling as they absorbed the initial barrage. The Vanguard rocked violently, but the ship held steady, its advanced shielding absorbing the impact. "Shields holding," Lieutenant Yamamoto confirmed, his voice tense but calm. "But we've been targeted. Looks like they're using a new type of weapon." Leclerc's heart raced as she quickly assessed the situation. The Rakel were not only capable of FTL travel but had developed weapons that could overwhelm even humanity's best defenses. She quickly barked orders. "Activate countermeasures, fire the first volley of plasma rounds, and bring the main cannons online." Dr. Reyes worked feverishly at her console. "Captain, we're being targeted by multiple energy beams. There's something strange about their frequencies. They're almost alive, resonating with the very fabric of space itself. This isn't just technology. It's something more." "What are you saying, Dr. Reyes?" Leclerc demanded, her brow furrowed. Reyes paused for a moment, looking at the readouts with confusion. "I don't know. It's like their weapons are tapping into something deep within space, something fundamental. It could explain how they've been able to remain so advanced for so long. It's almost like they've mastered the very laws of nature." Leclerc's mind raced. This could give them a serious edge. "We need to adapt now." The crew immediately sprang into action. The Vanguard's weapons systems powered up as they fired their first counterstrike, plasma rounds streaking through space toward the enemy's position. The blast of energy lit up the dark void as the enemy's invisible shields shimmered and cracked under the assault. But the Rakel were quick to retaliate. A deep, bone-rattling hum echoed through the vanguard as another pulse hit the shields, forcing the ship to stagger. "Shields at 72%. Yamamoto reported, his voice clipped. "They're adjusting their fire. They've learned how to counter our weapons." The Vanguard crew knew they were in uncharted territory. They had always known that this would be the fight of their lives, but now the reality of it was fully setting in. The Rakel were not just another enemy. They were masters of the void, wielding powers that humanity had only dreamed of. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to prove that humanity was capable of standing against anything, no matter how advanced or terrifying. Leclerc quickly analyzed their options. They couldn't rely solely on brute force. They needed to think outside the box, something humanity was known for. "Dr. Reyes, is there any way we can disrupt their weapons' frequencies?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm despite the pressure mounting around her. "I think I can adapt the Vanguard sensors to emit a harmonic frequency that could interfere with their energy beams. It's risky, though. If it doesn't work, we could lose our shields entirely." "Do it," Leclerc ordered without hesitation. The ship's systems hummed as Dr. Reyes began adjusting the sensor array, focusing a pulse of energy that rippled outward like a wave. The crew held their breath as the ship's systems powered up, and a blinding flash of energy enveloped them. For a moment, nothing happened. But then, something incredible occurred. The Rakel's weapons flickered, faltered, and then stopped entirely. "We've disrupted their weapons," Reyes shouted, her voice filled with disbelief. Leclerc's eyes widened. "We did it. Now's our chance. Fire all cannons." In a desperate rush, the Vanguard unleashed everything it had. Plasma bolts, missile strikes, and railgun projectiles rocketed toward the Rakel fleet, all while the ship's sensors emitted the disruptive frequency that kept their weapons offline. The battle had begun in earnest, but humanity's ingenuity was making a difference. The tides of war. The Vanguard shuddered as its weapons struck the heart of the Rakel fleet. The battle was fierce, with the very fabric of space warping around the powerful weapons and technology being unleashed. Captain Leclerc stood at the helm, her knuckles white from gripping the command chair, her mind working in overdrive. They had taken the initiative, but the Rakel were relentless, countering every move with calculated precision. This wasn't a fight for survival anymore. It was a battle for humanity's place in the galaxy. Direct hit on their flagship, Lieutenant Yamamoto called out, his voice steady but filled with awe. "We've cracked their shields, but they're reinforcing their defenses. This isn't over yet, Captain." Leclerc's eyes remained focused on the viewscreen. The Vanguard's cannons had delivered a powerful blow to the heart of the Rakel fleet, but the alien ships were quickly adapting. Their shields shimmered and flickered, absorbing and deflecting most of the Vanguard's attacks. But there was a vulnerability. The Rakel's technology, though advanced, was not perfect. Every system had its flaws, and Leclerc knew that if they pushed hard enough, they could break through. "Captain," Dr. Reyes spoke from the science station, her voice sharp and filled with urgency. "The Rakel flagship is powering up a new weapon. It's massive, far beyond anything we've seen so far. If they fire that, it could wipe out half our fleet in one shot." Leclerc's heart skipped a beat. She had been expecting a weapon of mass destruction, but the scale of what Reyes was describing was far beyond what humanity had prepared for. They had one chance, one window to stop it before it could obliterate everything they had worked for. "All hands, brace for impact," Leclerc ordered, her voice now cutting through the tension. "We can't let them fire that weapon." The crew reacted instantly, scrambling to their stations, tightening their grip on whatever they could find to steady themselves. On the bridge, the silence was deafening, each person holding their breath, waiting for the next move. The sound of the Vanguard's engines roaring in the background was a stark reminder of how fragile their situation truly was. "Captain," Reyes continued, her voice strained. "I have an idea. It's risky, but it might work. If we can overload the energy signature of their flagship, it could trigger a cascade failure in their weapon systems. But we'll need to get close, really close, to do it." Leclerc's mind raced. She didn't need to be told twice. If they didn't act now, the Rakel could bring an end to humanity's first mission of interstellar exploration. "Do it. Prepare the overload sequence. We'll get as close as we can." Yamamoto spoke up. "We're already on the edge of their range, Captain. Any closer and they'll get a clear shot at us." But Leclerc's resolve was firm. "We don't have a choice. We take that shot, or we lose everything. All crew, prepare for evasive maneuvers. Get us in close, Lieutenant." The Vanguard darted forward, its engines roaring with a power that matched the desperate urgency of the crew. The enemy's flagship loomed larger, its dark silhouette cutting through the stars like a beast stalking its prey. Leclerc's hands shook, but her mind was sharp. They could do this. They had to. As the ship closed in, the Rakel flagship's weapon began to hum, the air vibrating with the raw power being gathered. A massive pulse of energy began to form at the heart of the flagship's core, its light blinding even from a distance. Leclerc gritted her teeth. They had seconds, maybe less. "Ready, Dr. Reyes?" she asked, her voice low. "Ready," came the reply, steady as a rock. With a flick of a switch, Reyes initiated the overload sequence. The Vanguard shuddered as its own energy reserves were diverted toward a single purpose, creating an energy signature powerful enough to mimic the Rakel flagship's weapon. The idea was simple: draw their fire, overload their weapon systems by giving them a target too tempting to resist. "Now," Leclerc said, her voice commanding. The Vanguard shot forward, closing the gap with breathtaking speed. The massive pulse of energy from the Rakel flagship was now fully charged and ready to fire. It was a weapon that could crack planets in half, a weapon that the crew of the Vanguard had never seen the likes of before. But Leclerc was no stranger to danger. They could not, would not, let it fire. "Captain, they've locked on," Yamamoto shouted from his station. "Activate countermeasures," Leclerc ordered. The ship swerved and dove, narrowly avoiding the first barrage. It was like a game of cat and mouse. Dodge and weave, outmaneuver and survive. The Vanguard danced around the incoming fire, the crew's nerves frayed to the limit. The enemy flagship's weapon charged again, ready to fire. Leclerc didn't flinch. She had made her move, and now she was betting everything on it. The Vanguard swerved once more, skimming dangerously close to the flagship's core. Then, with the force of 1,000 suns, the energy overload detonated. A pulse of light and energy ripped through the void, a shockwave that stunned even the Vanguard's crew. "Direct hit," Reyes shouted. "The flagship's weapon systems are offline." "We've done it, Captain." Leclerc allowed herself a brief smile of relief, but she knew this was only the beginning. The Rakel were not defeated, they were merely stunned. And in the chaos of battle, they would adapt, as they always did. But for now, humanity had struck a decisive blow. The Vanguard had taken on the impossible and won, but the price of this victory was only beginning to reveal itself. The Rakel would retaliate, and when they did, humanity would need to be ready. Leclerc stood tall in the command chair, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen as the first rays of victory began to glow. "This is just the beginning," she muttered to herself. "We've made our stand. Now, let's see how far we can push it." The tide of war was shifting, and humanity's resolve would be tested. But one thing was clear: humanity was no longer the underdog in this fight. They had struck back, and the galaxy would remember it. The Rakel's retaliation. The battle had given humanity its first taste of victory, but it was a bitter one. The Rakel, stunned by the failure of their flagship's weapon, were far from defeated. In the vastness of space, no one truly wins without sacrifice. Captain Leclerc stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, her expression hardening as the damage reports poured in. The energy overload had done its job, but at a cost. Several systems were severely compromised, and the ship was running low on fuel reserves. Humanity's first victory in deep space had been a Pyrrhic one, and the Rakel were already preparing their counterattack. "Captain," Lieutenant Yamamoto's voice broke through her thoughts. He stood at the tactical station, his face taut with worry. "The Rakel are regrouping. I'm detecting a massive buildup of energy in their fleet. It looks like they're preparing for something bigger." Leclerc's mind raced. The Rakel weren't known for showing mercy, and their retaliation would come swiftly. "What's their estimated time of arrival?" Yamamoto's fingers flew over the console. "At this speed, we'll have less than 2 hours before their reinforcements arrive. We're not equipped to take on a full assault, Captain." Leclerc felt a deep knot form in her stomach. The Vanguard was humanity's flagship, but even its advanced technology was no match for a full-on assault from the Rakel. Humanity had won a battle, but it seemed increasingly likely they might lose the war. Still, she refused to succumb to defeatist thoughts. They had to keep pushing forward, no matter the odds. "Prepare the fleet for evasive maneuvers," she ordered. "We'll need to stay mobile, keep them guessing. And bring up the long-range scanners. Let's see what else we're dealing with." As the crew scrambled to carry out the orders, Leclerc turned to Dr. Rice, the ship's lead scientist, who had been monitoring the Rakel's movements closely. "Dr. Rice, what's our best option here? Do we have any kind of tactical advantage we can use?" Rice, who had been staring intently at the holographic display of the Rakel fleet, frowned. "I've been running simulations based on their previous battle tactics, Captain. There's a pattern to their strategy. They rely heavily on overwhelming force, which is why their weapons are so devastating. But that also means they're vulnerable to ambushes. If we can strike their command ship with precision, we might be able to throw their entire fleet into disarray." Leclerc's mind lit up at the suggestion. It was risky, but it was humanity's best shot at turning the tide. "Can we pull it off? Are our ships capable of making such a precise strike?" Dr. Reyes nodded. "It will take everything we have, but it's possible. We'll need to use the Vanguard as the spearhead. If we can get within firing range of their command ship, we'll have a brief window to target its vulnerable areas, mainly their communication arrays and energy cores. If we hit them hard enough, we could disrupt their coordination, maybe even cripple their fleet's ability to retaliate." Leclerc's mind churned with the plan. "All right, let's do it. But we're going to need help from the rest of the fleet. Yamamoto, get in touch with the other ships and let them know what we're planning. We strike fast, we strike hard, and then we get out of there before the Rakel realize what hit them." The urgency in her voice pushed the crew into action. The Vanguard would lead the assault, but they weren't alone. Humanity's fleet, a collection of ships from Earth and Mars, had formed a ragtag but determined force. Together, they had made it this far, and now they would have to put their trust in one another more than ever before. "Captain," Rice said, her voice tight with concentration, "there's one more thing you need to know. The Rakel flagship has a secondary weapon system, a sort of pulse cannon that can wipe out entire fleets in one shot. I'm detecting fluctuations in their energy levels, and it looks like they're preparing to charge that weapon up again." Leclerc's heart dropped. The Rakel had already shown their strength once, and if they unleashed that weapon again, it could obliterate their entire fleet. There was no time to waste. "We can't let them fire that weapon," Leclerc said firmly. "Once we initiate the strike, we'll need to disable that weapon first. We hit their command ship, disrupt their systems, and prevent them from firing that pulse cannon. Rise, you'll need to guide us in with precise targeting." The clock was ticking. Humanity had one shot, one opportunity to make a decisive strike against the Rakel before they unleashed their full wrath. As the Vanguard and the rest of humanity's fleet moved into position, the weight of the situation pressed down on Leclerc's shoulders. The battle was far from over, and this next move would determine whether humanity survived in this unforgiving part of the galaxy. The Vanguard shot forward, its engines pushing the ship to the limits of its capabilities. The sleek and powerful vessel tore through the void, moving swiftly toward the heart of the Rakel fleet. Behind them, humanity's fleet followed, a show of strength that gave them an edge in this fight. On the bridge, Leclerc and her crew were focused, every person at their post. Yamamoto monitored the tactical display, ensuring that the fleet was staying in formation. Rise worked tirelessly on the science station, calculating the precise coordinates for the Vanguard strike. "All ships are in position," Yamamoto called out. "We're ready, Captain." Leclerc nodded, her face set with determination. "Initiate the attack. For humanity." The first wave of fire from the Vanguard struck the Rakel's defensive perimeter with deadly accuracy. The Rakel flagship's shields flickered under the assault, but they held strong. "Their shields are holding," Rice said, "but we're making an impact. Keep pushing." As the Vanguard closed in, the Rakel flagship began to charge its pulse cannon once more. The devastating weapon began to glow with a fierce light, and Leclerc knew that time was running out. "Disrupt that weapon," she ordered, her voice sharp with urgency. Rise immediately focused all of the Vanguard's weapon systems on the pulse cannon's energy core. The concentrated energy blast hit its target, causing the weapon to short-circuit and explode in a brilliant flash of light. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the Rakel flagship's shields collapsed, its power grid flickering and sparking. The fleet's coordination dissolved, throwing the Rakel into disarray. "Now's our chance," Leclerc shouted. "All ships, focus fire on their command ship. Take it down before they can regroup." The final assault was a blur of chaos and destruction. Humanity's fleet swarmed around the Rakel flagship, pouring everything they had into a concentrated strike. The Vanguard led the charge, firing its weapons with deadly precision. The Rakel flagship, now crippled and disorganized, was no match for the combined might of humanity's fleet. The command ship buckled under the relentless fire, its outer hull tearing apart as explosions rocked the structure. Finally, with a deafening roar, the flagship was destroyed in a cataclysmic explosion. The battle was won.